welcome back. I want us to talk today about our Thanksgiving traditions. I have went through a whole series, setting gratitude as an attitude for us in November. We've looked at several verses and Psalms that help support that attitude of being grateful. And then last week we talked about how Thanksgiving even got started. Why is it a thing? Who started it? That kind of thing. And so this week, just like the Pilgrims started the tradition by sharing a meal with their friends and probably reflecting on how thankful they were for the harvest and how far they had come in their journey in the new world, I think we as families should set traditions and intentions that carry on throughout the generations. So in that, I want to share my traditions, and I'm looking forward to hearing what yours are. So let's I think that Thanksgiving for my family has always been a time that we would set aside to be thankful. So every Thanksgiving we gather at my mom's. We say we're going to eat at noon, but we know that it's going to be 11:30-ish. So we're always there sometime between 10:30 and 11 to help Mom with the final touches. And I have one sister, so my immediate family is really small. So it's usually just maybe 10 or 12 of us that gather. And as we're getting there, the rolls are going in the oven. That's the way it always is. So my mom has traditionally cooked most of the meal, and sometimes when we lived close, my girls would go over and kind of help with chopping and that kind of things. But she prepares for a couple of days before. And when you walk in, the house smells amazing. Like, it is just all kinds of, like, you can smell celery and onions and just all kinds of fragrance. And your stomach just immediately starts growling. So, my tradition is to just have coffee. I don't eat breakfast that day because we do eat so early that I think breakfast would just be too much. So, we typically just have some coffee and then head on over. And let's talk about what we eat. But first, my mom will usually have a verse picked out about Thanksgiving or reflection, turning toward God, whatever, something along that line that we'll read, and that kind of starts it. And then each person will go around the table and tell what they have been thankful for throughout the year. Sometimes it's the people, sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's just very general. And then there's been years when it's very specific. So it just depends on how the year has gone. But every person has to say something. And you want people to hurry up and say something, because guess what we're waiting to do? We're waiting to eat the food. So we want everybody to come up with something and be ready to say something they're thankful for. But I think it's important, like, this is our tradition, to pause before we say our prayer and have our food together, that we take time to remember what God has blessed us with up to that point in the year. And I just think as my parents get older, you just don't know how many more years you have together. So it's just really important to me that we're able to be together. And so at that point, we're ready to eat. Now, we have a very traditional Thanksgiving meal, or what I consider to be a Southern traditional Thanksgiving meal. How about that? We have turkey that's usually baked in the oven, cornbread dressing, no stuffing in this family. And we also have green beans, which have usually been canned from the summer harvest, and my mom's infamous potato salad. Now, there is no other potato salad to my daughters. It's only my mom's. And it's very simple potato salad, but it's well loved. And then always mac and cheese for the grandkids, because that's what they wanted. I always wanted Mom to make. And then rolls. Now, my mom always does Sister Schubert's. They come in an aluminum pan, and they're in the oven cooking when we walk in the door. We do have traditional cranberry sauce out of the can, that jellied, I cannot stand it, and giblet gravy. So that's it. That's what we have. And I'm usually responsible for dessert, and I have a pumpkin pie cheesecake recipe that I do every year. My youngest daughter absolutely loves pumpkin pie, and it's a way to incorporate that. And everybody likes it because it's just it's really good. It's not overpowering pumpkin. It's just really good. So that's usually our dessert. And so we're all sitting around at the table together and sharing in this meal. And you're eating until you just can't eat anymore, and anticipating that that's probably the only meal that I'm going to eat that day. Sometimes we will have some leftovers later, but usually when we eat that meal, I'm done for. So let me just say, as I'm starting to see my own family grow, my older daughter's engaged, and I'm seeing my family start to extend, I'm thinking about my own traditions that I want to start in my family. And I just think it's so important to give our children something to hold on to, a tradition or something they can look back on when we're not here anymore, to share in that special time with them. So if you have a young family, I would encourage you to start some traditions now. And many of you may already have some traditions that you do with your extended family, so I'm anxious to hear about those. It doesn't really matter what the tradition is, just that it's something you do every year together. And as we're moving into the Christmas season and thinking about Christ's sacrifice for us, I think it's so important to set an intention that is thankful. That was always our motto. We are going to be thankful before we get presents. When my girls were little, that was what we always said. And to this day, they do not let me think about putting the Christmas tree up until the Friday after Thanksgiving, and they remind me of my word. So it's stuck. So I think those little traditions really do mean so much more than we give them credit for. So I'm going to leave you off with Psalms 95:10 that says, "Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise." I just encourage you to develop some traditions and stick with them every year, because I think it'll mean so much to your family. I hope you've enjoyed this Thanksgiving series and that you are entering into the Christmas season with a thankful heart, because we have so much that God has blessed us with, including his only son who died for our sins. So lest we ever forget that, that is the reason for this whole season in my life. So subscribe to my channel, like this video, and I'll see you as we start into our Christmas series. Thanks.